everyone, and welcome to the Soul of the War. Today, for our candidate spotlight, we will be interviewing Mike Ellers, candidate for Virginia Senate. So let's just hop right into it. Tell me about yourself. Give me a little bit about your background and where you're from.
Okay, I'm a Long Island boy from New York, born and raised. Two parents who were tremendous. Dad was a World War II vet, mom an artist. So Dad was also a carpenter. And he passed away in 2009, so I used the past tense. But he was a carpenter, and through that we learned so much. Just there's so many values you could learn from your father if he's in construction, like measure twice, cut once, that kind of thing. You take that into life. My mom's still alive. She's 90, almost. She's an artist. I think she's a tremendous artist. She's well known. She's done some pretty famous paintings that are out and about.
Wow.
Early on in my life, I always was called to service as a career. So I looked to be a cop on Long Island, which was pretty important. Where I grew up, it's a very good job. It's very well paying. In fact, probably the highest paying cop job in the country.
Wow.
Police officer job. So it's Suffolk County, Long Island. So I was on that job, but shortly thereafter I got injured. So as a result of that injury, my life was kind of topsy-turvy. I sat down, I reflected, talked to my wife, Camille, at the time, and I said, look, what am I going to do? I'm 27, I'm retired. Not too many people are. I said, what am I going to do? We prayed about it. And as a cop, one of the things you do, you spend a lot of time in schools, just solving problems, get called there for trouble, whatever. And I always got along really well with kids. So God kind of said to me, you get along really well with kids, I want you to be a teacher.
We're going to tap a little bit more into education
Sure.
later on in our conversation.
You got it.
Because you have an extensive background in education, so we definitely are going to talk about the school system. But I still want to just touch on more about who you are in the beginning of this conversation. You know, how did you get involved in politics?
Okay, well, being the fact that what's going on in our country, so many different things, the dissolution of family, COVID, the masks, all these mandates, all those kinds of things disenfranchised families.
Yeah.
So I know we felt it. I'm the father of three. I have a 30-year-old, 28-year-old, and 18-year-old. But my 18-year-old was only 14, 15 when the COVID thing went on. So his life was thrown completely into the wash. I mean, it was he was a 10th grader, basically erased his high school experience.
Wow.
So you look at all the problems kids were going through. So that was one factor. I started to look around and see what was going on with curriculum in Virginia. Yeah. Virginia lost its way as far as what was being taught in the classrooms, how parents were being, the value of the parent was being usurped by government, the overreach of government.
Where do you feel like Virginia began to lose their way?
Well, I've been battling since I've been in Virginia. There's been certain things encroaching. The fact that some folks wanted to be Common Core, like most of the other nation, but Virginia wanted to maintain its own standards.
Okay.
Those kinds of things.
Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, quite
Which?
honestly, maintaining its own standards.
Oh, it is a good thing.
Yeah.
But it's really, to a large degree, kind of smoke and mirrors. Because a lot of the materials that people use in Virginia, you open the page and you'll see the Common Core standards. So it's kind of disingenuous. So we looked at that. We looked at the things that were going wrong. I looked at the things with COVID. I looked at the nation. I looked at the fact that certain things about teachers were being hammered. People just weren't trusting teachers any longer. And the fact that our General Assembly in Virginia knew very little about education. And then along came another thing that provided an impetus was what happened in Loudoun County, Virginia. I don't know if you're familiar with what happened there. There was an incident wherein a transgender individual harmed a young lady, and it wasn't reported. There was actually a rape involved, but it wasn't reported. So you say to yourself, why wasn't it reported? Well, there was a bill that was presented called HB 257.
Yes.
And that bill allowed principals to make the decision of whether or not something should be reported to the authorities.
What?
So having been a principal.
Whether it's a crime or not?
Well, yeah, they had the choice. They had the choice to say, well, this wasn't quite heinous enough. So with that particular situation, that young man, girl, I don't remember what, I think she identified as a woman, was moved to another school. The principal and superintendent knew this. And then it happened again. So that bill actually allowed the fertile ground for that to happen. So knowing that was out there, knowing Governor Youngkin was trying to come in and his first action was wanting to repeal that bill, I was listening to all this, taking into account the education, what was going on with these bills, things like that, the dissolution of family, the mandates of COVID, and then the final straw was just evaluating the safety of where we live. Now, if you live around Virginia, Maryland, wherever, you know that all these interstates represent conduits for drugs, human trafficking, you name it. The opioid epidemic is all fluid in our area. So my particular area is in something called the 28th District. And if you look at it from the satellite photo, you have Interstate 66, 64, 95, and 81. They're framed out. And so that is traffic all over the place. And I recognized that crime was going up, incidents were going up, family confidence was going down in school systems, and all of this just compelled me to do something about it. And then the guy in my area who was going to be our incumbent was running for Congress. So he's running for Congress, and I said to myself, I want that seat. I want to be a Virginia state senator. I don't want to be a congressman. Virginia needs someone to steward it forward and help it, and someone who had a background in all the things I have a background in.
That's amazing that you touched on most of the interview. No, but it was awesome. It was awesome, and I'm so grateful for that thorough background, because I needed that. I needed to hear that. So that was awesome. So just hopping right into it, for clarification, are you a Democrat or are you a Republican?
I'm a Republican.
You are a Republican?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And what challenges have you faced running for office in Virginia?
The primary design. First of all, when you challenge an incumbent, anybody, and you may have experienced this yourself, but when you challenge an incumbent, people look at you like you have the audacity to challenge the incumbent, right? So you're going, yes, I do. Absolutely. And when the incumbent wants to be a congressman, when the incumbent was one of the few Republicans that signed HB 257, when the incumbent kind of has lost touch with the people, the folks, and just really kind of serves corporations, when that's occurred, people need a voice.
Absolutely.
So I'm a strong voice. I'm a loud voice, as you know. And my career is being a principal, protecting children, being a teacher, protecting children. And I've done things in education that no one else has done that I guess we could get into. So I've always been that voice of parents, and I've always invited parents to partner with me.
I call that being the voice for the voiceless. So
it's really true.
Especially when you have people that just vote, based off of just seeing an incumbent name on the ballot and don't even do their research on who exactly is on their ballot. So having someone stand up and speak out is really important. And just the average citizen running for office is really important, which is why this platform is here, because we want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to put their name out there, to, promote themselves properly and effectively. So thank you for that. Thank you for the courage.
Well, it's really difficult, because what they did was they really want to make sure that you don't run. So you start getting the phone calls early on. The incumbent that I'm running against actually mistreated somebody else who was thinking about running for this seat. So I don't know if you're aware of there's a business in my district called Gore Melts. He's a young man who owns the building. He owns the business, self-starter. So he stayed open throughout COVID. And he was basically persecuted for that. The government came after him, ABC came after him, and he reached out to his state senator, who just happens to be the incumbent I'm running against, who turned a deaf ear to him. So he too is running. He was going to run for this seat, but they penciled him out. And so I just coincidentally was jumping in anyway. So we're running lockstep.
Well, let me ask you this. Can you look at this camera?
Yes, ma'am.
Give some advice to a young person looking to run for office for the first time that might actually deal with those same challenges that you have dealt with or you have seen with your experience in politics in Virginia.
Okay. First of all, you have to realize that if your heart's telling you to run, and in my case, it was not only my heart, it was my prayer, my faith, God. He said, Mike, this is what you need to do. You need to be a voice beyond the classroom. So he clearly gave me that mandate. So go out and do it. So don't let anyone tell you that you can't do it. Now, financially, it's going to be difficult. The fundraising you're going to hit a lot of dead ends. Folks don't want to give the challenger money. So you're going to have to decide, do I want to be a corporate sellout or do I want to represent the grassroots? I'm all about the grassroots, regular folks. Go out, shake hands, introduce yourself, tell folks your message, get on social media, sell your message, which is difficult. I'm not really comfortable with that social media bit, but get out there, sell yourself. If you can't sell yourself, no one's going to believe in you to vote for you. So it's critical that you have a good background and you hone your skills every day. If there's something you don't know about, don't lie about it. Learn about it. And make sure that you're hitting it every day, being a lifelong learner, and learn throughout the course of running. Since last February when I started running, I feel like I've gained another master's degree.
Wow.
So just understanding the process, the people you're running against, etc., it's critical.
Absolutely. And thank you for that. That's some real genuine advice, because I wish somebody would have told me how difficult it was going to be for fundraising. When I ran for office, I just was like, I have a degree in political science and I can do this. But that great advice for young people looking to run for office. So thank you for that. You touched a little bit on your faith, and you are obviously a man of God. How has God influenced the trajectory of your career and your current aspiration?
I get a chill. All right, so here's the deal. My mom, we were raised in a very prayerful family. Any difficulties in our lives, we gave them up to God.
Amen.
Physical issues, mental problems. We had a lot of folks like with addictions, scattered throughout the extended family, things of that nature. Every day ended with, we need to pray. We need to start out with prayer, but every day ended with a list of people we were going to pray for. My mother. So,
are you a fan of the current governor, Glenn Youngkin?
We worked hard to help him. He's like most politicians. I think Glenn Youngkin's a work in progress.
Okay.
He's got folks around him who I think give him sometimes not great advice, and he doesn't necessarily listen, but I just think he could probably fix his inner sanctum a little bit. I'd like to see him continue to work toward Virginia. When you're the governor of Virginia, you get one term. So it's difficult. You don't go, okay, I'm going to build the foundation and then keep going the second term.
So what's your thoughts on extending that? Because, it's really hard for someone to leave a footprint when they only have one term.
It's difficult, true.
Yeah.
So you kind of got to look around you and say, okay, if I leave this office, will there be somebody who could take it over for me? So I'll tell you a neat story about him if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
This is our introduction to Glenn Youngkin. Besides the fact that we just liked him from the get-go. So he was running. My son Michael's very political, my oldest boy. So he came up with this slogan, Virginia runs on Youngkin, rather than Duncan, right? So he went with that. People liked that quite a bit. So he became kind of friendly with Glenn Youngkin. So my son was running for office a couple of years ago in Northern Virginia, and it's hard. It was difficult. He was 28 years old. The party didn't really rally around him because they didn't see him as a viable candidate. And so because
the party is really just branching out into young people. It's just now breaking that barrier.
They're trying, but you have to really satisfy a lot of folks. It's a club. We got to fight that uniparty thing, where young people are just disrespected. Because we need all different voices.
Absolutely.
And my son's got a unique look on things. So he was running, and he became friendly with Glenn Youngkin. So his primary was a botch. The party didn't get behind him. It was I thought it was a little bit of a shady. So at the very end, Glenn Youngkin promised my son, because they were friends, I will be there for the vote count of the primary. So we're waiting. My wife and I are there, and all of a sudden, this van pulls up, and out comes Glenn Youngkin for the vote count. He had to drive from Petersburg or something all the way to Manassas. It was a bit of a hike, but he promised, and he came. Those kinds of things.
That matters.
And he also helped my son because my son had some outstanding bills that accrued from running, and Glenn helped him with that. So
Wow.
that was pretty amazing. And in Glenn's pocket, I don't know if you met him before, in his pocket is a very worn, smoothed out wooden cross. And he reaches in his pocket, and his faith is in his hand, and he speaks to his parents, and he speaks to his upbringing. And so if you have that, you know, you're going to make mistakes, but I'm going to forgive you. Yeah. You're going to have a trajectory that might be kind of this way and that way, but I'm going to be like, look, his heart is in it. So that's how I feel about Glenn Youngkin. I'm going to support him. I'd love to help him, you know, fix education in Virginia. Yeah. I truly would. And I would love to advise him. But right now, that's where we are.
You know what I find so interesting? You keep saying fix education in Virginia. I actually did a little bit of time in Virginia schools when I was in middle school and part of high school. And the education system, to me, in my opinion, was amazing, like outstanding compared to where I was coming from, Prince George's County Public Schools.
Oh, okay, Prince George's, okay.
Yes, it was literally night and day difference. So, I mean, I'm interested to hear your take on where, you know, we can go about shifting education and improving Virginia education. But before we get to that, I do want to talk to you a little bit about COVID.
Sure.
So, did you get the vaccine? Do you agree with the vaccine?
Had to.
You did?
I had to get it because of the fact that my mom lived in New York, and they weren't going to let us visit her.
Okay, yeah. I did. I got the vaccine as well, but it is still to this day one of my biggest regrets.
It was a regret. I would never do it again.
Yeah.
I didn't
hate
want
that
to.
I did it.
I waited till the last minute. In fact, the second shot, you know, the way you have to get two, the second one made me so sick for weeks.
Yeah.
So that was a foolish move, but no one should have been mandated to take that
What
shot.
I think is so funny now is just that how silent everyone is now. Like, you barely hear about the vaccine. Now it's like, oh, everything is just great.
Yeah. Well, it's,
I'm like, wow.
No, I just worry about the
Wow.
long-term effects. I was very worried about my
Yeah.
youngest getting it because they were saying all the heart issues young men were getting. So he was young, but his college, he just started Temple University, and they mandated it.
Wow.
So it's
And I think that is so unfortunate, especially when you're talking about age school kids, right? And forcing them to get it or they can't come to school. And I'm like, well, what about education? What about them having an education? Because this is still something that we are all still getting used to, all still learning about, and we don't know the long-term effects of this. So it's like to mandate that on a child without, you know what I'm saying?
To mandate anything. And the thing is, for years, even when I was a principal, there were plenty of families that opted out of different shots, and they had religious exceptions. And if it is your feeling as a parent that my child should not get shot X, Y, Z, it's the way it goes. It's the way it goes. They have to just, now, as long as everybody else has it, if that's the way it goes for them, that was their choice. But with these folks walking around with all sorts of ailments that we're not allowed to know about.
Yeah.
So, you know, COVID was just added onto the pile. But that was an unfortunate learning experience for our nation that cannot be repeated.
That cannot be repeated or undone.
No.
Unfortunately.
No, unfortunately.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the legalization of marijuana. What is your take on the legalization of marijuana for recreational use?
I look at marijuana based on my research as a gateway drug.
It is.
I do. And I like my current state. I would like people not to have any, just need to go out and do things like that. I worry because even folks that are libertarians, for example, that think you shouldn't have any rulings inside your own homes. What I've experienced, this is my own personal experience. I've had children come into my charge as the school administrator whose family were very big users recreationally. And just the kid being in that home, breathing that in, derailed the kid from a learning perspective. So anything in my brain that could derail the future of a child or give them the wrong message, I don't agree with.
Well, what's your take on the angle as far as it bringing money to Virginia?
That's where I don't think we should base our finances as a state on vices. I'm not a big fan of gambling. I'm not a big fan of drugs. The interesting thing is once they legalize pot, right? Once they start saying everybody starts letting their guard down about marijuana, you then see billboards that say, driving high equals DUI. So people get trapped. They're suddenly like, oh, I could do this, but then they're getting, locked up for it.
Yeah.
So I just really want people to be, it sounds so corny, I just want people to be high on the things we could get high on without putting things into our body.
I agree.
And, our bodies are our temples.
Amen.
And I do not think we should do anything that derails that. I don't drink.
Absolutely.
I never tried any cigarettes. I never did anything. Now, there are folks that maybe medicinally need CBD or whatever, I guess. But I refrain. I won't ever condone it.
So what he's saying is that your body deserves love and respect. I love
And
that.
you need to treat it like it's a gift because it's supposed to go 150 years. We're the ones
Yes.
that changed that.
Yes.
So,
yes.
I
agree.
it's like not getting regular oil change, right?
Yeah.
So
So speaking on that, what laws have you considered to combat the rising crime that is happening in Virginia and across the country?
as far as laws I'd get written in, first of all, the things we have to pay attention to is the fact that there's a transience involved with the local sheriff's offices and police departments because they're so poorly paid.
Yes.
So the way I look at things is from the perspective of an ex-cop. So when we look at that, when you look at the fact that police officers, like where I'm from, I live in Greene County, the sheriffs barely make 50 grand to start. That's not really a living wage anymore.
At all.
Now, it was good 20 years ago, but now that's not a living wage. If you want to have a couple of kids and you want to stay on the job and you want to become part of, the longevity of staying on that job and making that sheriff's office awesome, we need to take care of you. We need to compensate you. If you're willing to give your life for others, we need to recognize that. So one of the things I want to put into effect for that is I want to build a police college. Because I really think that the reason police officers and sheriff's deputies and sheriffs aren't given what they deserve is because folks don't look at it like another job. Like, oh, that guy's got a 4-year degree in biology. He should make that, right? So if we have a 4-year degree in police science that is sponsored, so say you wanted to go be a sheriff and Greene County sponsored you to go to this 4-year school. During those 4 years, you would learn all about police science. You would be trained, exhaustively with things like, ethics and how to treat other populations.
That's amazing.
You would understand what we would do with deadly physical force over and over again.
Yeah.
4 years of role play,
Yes.
4 years of popping into different situations, being a cadet, right?
Yes.
And then you would sign off on, okay, you paid for me, I'll give you 6 or 8 years
That is
as
awesome.
a payback.
That is
So,
awesome.
that's-
And recommendation to add on to your idea,
Yeah.
maybe even consider, how they have the CTE programs at the schools, like the career
Oh, yeah.
programs, maybe including that into a high school program. Like their last year, they can start taking classes
Easily.
on that and integrating straight into that out of high school.
It's a great program. And the other thing in addition to, when I went to the police academy, our police academy in New York is the longest police academy. We were also EMTs. So we were first responders and police officers. So during those 4 years, you're getting different breakouts. So you're getting like internships. And then you're also learning to be an EMT. So you arrive on a scene, you're always first, right?
Yeah.
You start life-saving measures.
I think that there's a number of things that can be taken away from, police in New York. We traveled out there not too long ago, and we noticed that they are on almost every corner. DC needs to follow suit because
We have
the
to
crime.
depoliticize the police department. You can't. They're not the enemies.
Yeah.
If you met your average cop, the average guy on the beat is someone who thought about that his or her whole life. And you get up in the morning knowing that some people want to hurt you, and the people that pay your paycheck don't want to.
Yeah.
And there's people out there defunding you or disrespecting you, or you look at starting in 2014. When cops started backing off because of what happened in Missouri. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's called the Ferguson effect. So
Yes.
police officers stopped wanting to be proactive.
Yes.
And as a result, you can't really think about that job. You can't go, I'm reluctant to do my job. You have to be confident that you're supported by the community.
Yeah.
You have the correct tools and the correct training.
I think that, it's important for us to acknowledge that there are some bad
Mm-hmm.
apples in the police department, and, some deaths have been preventable.
Mm-hmm.
So change is needed. But what I don't like is popular laws. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm putting this law into effect because I saw this state do it. I saw that state do it. And it's becoming a popular thing to do. I saw a hearing the other day that in the union rep for the police department in DC was just saying, yeah, we're losing like maybe 15 people a month.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a month. And at that rate, there's going to be no police left.
No, the recruitment can't keep up with it.
It can't.
And they're disrespected. And a good friend of mine, he's also running for office where we become very tight. His name is Mike Van Meter. He's also an ex-police officer, ex-FBI, phenomenal human being. He says, he's got this great way of looking at it. He said, would you close down a hospital for one bad doctor? Right?
Very good perspective.
It's true.
Yeah.
You just change it. And so the 99.9% of the police, even more than that, police officers, sheriff's deputies that are in it to do the right thing and protecting people, it's critical. And the other thing is, it's a job that folks of diverse backgrounds aspire to.
Yeah.
It's this in New York City, there's quite a few minorities on the job.
Yeah.
Right? So that's a great
I considered it
it's a
coming
great
out of college.
career.
It
so
is.
I mean, so you aspire to do that, and so folks, when you hear the defund thing, they're only thinking that it's affecting white police officers. It affects all police
all
officers.
police officers.
So
Absolutely.
if someone's life is endangered because of your decision to defund, you're complicit in hurting those folks.
So Virginia deals with such a massive amount of commuters and traffic. Traffic is just crazy. It was crazy getting here.
I agree.
So,
I agree.
what recommendations do you have to improve infrastructure and transportation in Virginia?
Well, building highways, has that worked? I can't even look at
It takes like 30 years
Oh,
to
I
build
can't even look at I can't even look at 66.
one road.
66 makes me feel like I'm watching the Jetsons. I'm going, all these roads, I don't even understand it. One day my son said to my wife and I, "Oh, follow us, we're going to Carrabba's." We're like, this is crazy. Where are you going? And, all these quick decisions, and it's really cartoonish. I just think I'm a big believer in mass transit. So, like, look at 29, for example. You're familiar with the way 29 goes right down the center of Virginia?
Yes.
I would love to see a train going right down 29. I like commuter railroads. And you could blame that on me being a Long Islander. We, on Long Island, I couldn't even give you the accurate percentage of folks that commute, but it is the busiest commuter railroad in the world. And cars are left in parking lots, and folks get on the train and take a nap and take a nice safe ride into the city. We need to make our rails a little more available and a little more commuter friendly. Yes, they're having stops. Yes, you have the metro going out to different spots, but you need to go across Virginia so you could transverse the whole Commonwealth without having to drive, because we do have an enormous amount of cars. There's probably no way to do from an infrastructure standpoint to eliminate them, because we just keep growing and we keep building more apartment buildings and et cetera. And the city spread from Washington, Nova is growing.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole state's going to be Nova sooner or later, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's down to us almost. We're in green. And I have folks that live in my neighborhood commuting to D.C. I think they're nuts, but they do it. Now, if they had a rail and they could just leave their car at a commuter railroad parking lot, that eliminates a heck of a lot of traffic and traffic fatalities and all of that anxiety, all of those kinds of things. And then you also create jobs in the building of the rail, the folks that are working the rails, fixing the rails,
Absolutely.
all those things. So that's the way I look at things. Building more highways. A friend of mine ran for office last year for Congress, and he was trying to tackle 95. I mean, if we had 12 lanes, it would still be busy.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those quagmires you probably can't solve, but we could solve it with rails that are elevated right over it, right down 29. There's a median that's super wide, and all I see when I see that median is a train going right down and take you right down to Tennessee and other points. So that's the way I see it. So from an infrastructure standpoint, the traffic, I think, would work best that way.
Okay. So, what are your thoughts on abortion rights?
I am pro-life. I am a Catholic. Our faith mandates that we respect the child. We understand that that child was known by God before that child was even born.
Absolutely.
It's a soul, and every soul needs to be protected. I do understand that there are folks who will yell at me about exceptions of rape and incest and things of that nature. But I look at all things, it sounds simplistic, I look at all things through education. The other thing is I always look at the fact that, say you were with child, right? And I shot you. How many murders am I going to jail for? Two. So, but the courts say that that's not a child. So is it only a child when we want it? Or is it always a child?
Very true. Very
So
good point.
that argument gets me nuts. Now, I would like, unfortunately, this is something I was talking to somebody about the other day. Girls are coming to maturation far earlier than they ever have.
Because of social media and
No, I'm
media.
physically. So if you're a teacher like me,
Oh, you mean?
oh,
okay.
physically, girls
Okay.
are coming to maturation
So
way
you
younger.
think sex ed should be continued to be taught?
I
in
don't
schools?
think sex ed. I think its parents need to be aware of this.
So. You don't think sex ed? Should
I
be-
don't think it's the responsibility of a teacher to teach sex ed because of the fact that you're trusting a 23, 24, 25-year-old who may not have that background. And just because you have a teaching degree doesn't mean you could teach sex ed. That doesn't mean that I could do that. Joe, I have a teaching degree? Yeah, I could teach sex ed. Absolutely not. I think it should be parental. I think we should teach parents what we should inform and partner with parents to say, look, we are seeing that a bunch of kids are reaching adulthood physically. Please join with us so we can have this conversation.
community schooling, and I respect that. I respect that, but you also have to keep in mind of those children that do not have that figure at home.
Oh, without
you
a
know?
doubt.
So
Without a doubt.
sometimes that conversation, and I'll just give you a little bit of background
Sure.
about myself, right? So my mom, when I had my period for the first time, it was just an uncomfortable conversation.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's, and some women are like that. Some women just do not like having
Yes.
those conversations with their kids. Some fathers are like that. I couldn't tell you a conversation I've had about sex with my dad. So it's like, some parents, even if they are in that household, it's just an uncomfortable conversation. So maybe, even breaking those barriers, but also you considering that child that doesn't have that home, that doesn't have two parents in the house or one parent in the house because the other parent is consistently gone out the house. And, so that would be the only type of conversation, or with their friends. And that's not good advice,
It's not,
So-
but more than likely it's going to happen. And it's going to happen through what the kids watch anyway, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But here's where I stand on that. Yes, parents may sign off on their kids being taught in school this subject matter. But what's gone on is, for too long, there's been a lack of transparency. So your kid will go to school and come home and tell you what he or she was taught, right? So say you had those exceptions. Single mom didn't have time, was uncomfortable with the situation. You need to have a guidance counselor or someone well-trained to have that conversation, number one, or the nurse. And you need the parent to be completely informed. So if you have a meeting of the parents at the beginning of the year that you're like, look, this is the curriculum. Do you object? What do you think? Would you be comfortable with us having this conversation? Nurse Jones has a degree in X, Y, and Z. Okay, she's worked in a maternity ward, whatever it might be,
Yeah.
to establish some kind of expertise.
I like that.
But you need something like that. Well, my career as an educator was always spent reaching out to parents. I did things, again, I mentioned before, that like I'll give you a quick thing. Parent conferences. So for 12 straight years as a principal, I had 100%, no exceptions, face-to-face parent conferences with every parent we serve in the schools. Nobody does that. They just accept the people that show up. We tracked it down. You couldn't have a conference. We're coming to your house,
I
sitting
love that.
sitting on your porch, talking
Take
about
me.
your kid.
Yes.
So it wasn't threatening. It was just like, look, this is important.
Yes.
I need your input. I'm
Yes.
inviting you.
Yes.
Please. And in the beginning it was annoying. People were like, who's this big hairy guy on my porch?
Wow.
But then they're like, oh, well, Allers is coming. And you also make it so that, let's sit on your porch, because say your kid has special needs. You don't want to have that conversation at school. Let's sit on your porch and talk about it. This is what I'm seeing.
Oh, You're amazing.
So this is
amazing.
pretty critical.
Yes.
Now, getting back to what you said when you had your, period. As a man teaching fourth grade, if you look back, I forgot the first time I taught fourth grade was like 97, 98, something like that. Nobody, none of the girls were reaching, maturity, right? I'm being very, 58-year-old guy having this conversation. Now, this last couple of years, more than half of the girls. So it's critical for those girls to understand their bodies, understand what their bodies can now do, understand what that could mean, understand what to do if something did happen, who to report it to, and understand the necessary medical care that they would need to immediately receive for investigative reasons and for their health and for their mental capacities. So that's where I go with that abortion question. It's got to be educational in addition to what people think they should do. But
thank you for that. And I've never heard that perspective, and I respect it, and I love it, quite honestly. Okay. I love that perspective. So thank you.
We just need to empower young girls. I mean, they need.
I 1,000% agree.
Okay.
1,000% agree. That should be the class. I agree, but also educating young boys. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. At the same time, they're right. They're not only their rights, their responsibilities and restrictions.
Yes. Yes.
So this is, because I had 3 sisters. Yes. Someone looked at my sisters cross-eyed. They were hurting.
I love it. I have a quick question regarding housing. So sure. I am 25 years old, and trying to live in Virginia, if I wanted to, is extremely difficult. What can you do, if elected, to make it easier for first-time home buyers to move into your community?
Do you have a car?
Yes.
Okay. What do you drive?
A Honda.
Fairly new?
Yes.
Personal property tax $3,000?
No.
2,500, 2,000. It's got to be up there, right? Okay. What would you like that money to be back in your pocket for housing?
Of course, but that's not going to do much.
Oh, it does a lot. Think of $500 a month, $400 a month back in your pocket. I'm just talking about making your life more affordable. Personal property tax has to go away. I'd even argue that income tax needs to go away. We don't need it. You realize Virginia had a $3.6 billion budget surplus last year. The amount of personal property tax added up to $3.6 billion.
Wow.
We don't need it.
Wow.
So we have to make life more affordable for all folks. We need to embrace younger people.
Yes.
Because Virginia, this is what I argue with my party as a Republican, we're aging out.
Yeah.
We need families to come to Virginia. My 30-year-old left Virginia. He's in West Virginia. He had the personal property tax. He had all these different things that were just frustrating him and restricting he and his wife from having a family. So they had to leave. Do I want my grandson with me? Yes, I do, but I understand.
Yeah.
So we left Long Island, my wife and I, years ago because our taxes were the highest in the nation. So I came here, and now Virginia is coming up. My property taxes went up $1,000 this year on my home.
Wow.
It's nuts. I don't live in a palace.
Wow.
I just retired.
Went up $1,000?
$1,000.
Wow.
So they're telling me they're coming up with these prices that my house is supposedly worth. And if it was worth what they told me, I'd sell it tomorrow. But it's just too much. So your taxing structure, there's not enough incentives for young couples to move into Virginia. I don't necessarily think we should, designate an area as this is low-income housing because then it becomes a low-income school.
Absolutely.
And then you have
and
to
you
go
have
with
a number of other problems.
a whole lot of problems. And that's unfortunate, but it's true.
Yes.
So I do think that we could easily help younger couples rehab properties. So I'd love you to,
that.
So I'd love you to go in and go, okay, I'm going to, my boyfriend, my husband, whatever it is, we're going to look at this property and we want to buy it. But Virginia could perchance get involved and say, okay, you fit this criteria in your age, your income, you rehab that, we'll give you an unbelievable deal on a mortgage. Awesome. We'll give you tax incentives.
On to the next topic. As an educator, you have been in diverse classrooms. Do you see African American history or African history as an important topic that your kids should learn?
Separate.
What do you mean?
Separate.
Like involved in the curriculum.
Well, here's the beautiful thing about it. If you tell the truth about history, you cover everybody. All right. Thomas Jefferson, I worked at his house for 2 years. He wrote, all men are created equal, right?
Yeah.
He didn't say women. He said all men are created equal. And then when you explain to kids, he actually meant all white landowners, right?
Yeah.
And they go, well, how is that fair? You have people become kids you teach kids how to think, not what to think, and you teach them to be skeptics and question,
Yes.
and question the justice of certain things, and question and go back and play Monday morning quarterback and see the mistakes that could have been improved. So I just believe in teaching it as truth. It's inconvenient, it's uncomfortable, but you have to be smart enough and well-versed enough and well-read enough to teach the truth. And you teach the amazing factor that we go from being enslaved to Harriet Tubman, to Sojourner Truth, to, Mrs. Parks, to all these folks, right? And to Martin Luther King, and we show the trajectory of the African-American race and the majesty of where it is now.
So do you believe that there should be reparations?
I don't believe in reparations from the standpoint we're doing it right now. I don't think we could do it correctly. I think reparations should be paid for, like President Obama. I agreed with him on very little, but he said reparations should come in the form of making your schools non-Pell. Your schools should be the best schools in the world. Opportunity should be the best opportunity in the world.
So I would love to see reparations in the form of student loan debt, or reparations in a form of continuous funding to HBCUs.
HBCUs, President Trump wrote that into law. He was the only president that ever did that.
Yeah.
So he wrote into law the funding for HBCUs, and that could continue. But I don't believe in this movement now where college campuses are segregating again. When they graduate, things like that. I think e pluribus unum, out of many one. And if we have that focus on we are all Americans, indivisible, that's critical to me. So yes, I agree that folks have had, horrible histories, like I said, but I think the reparations should come in the form of non-Pell education, opportunities, and equal opportunities for everyone. Because the word equity, when we talk about that in schools right now, it definitely has a Marxist kind of connotation, and that doesn't promote excellence.
I agree.
And so it also doesn't promote competition, and competition eliminates complacency. So I really empower kids. So the kids in my class, I mean, the way they succeeded, and the kids in my charge, it didn't matter what they looked like in the mirror. They just crushed.
I love that. Gun violence is a serious issue this country has been dealing with right now. Kids are dying, while racism, mental illness, and hate crimes are sparking mass shootings. What do you feel is the problem, and can it be resolved? And if so, how?
Well, I'm a Republican. I'm pro Second Amendment. I'm definitely do not believe that right should be infringed. And rarely do you see good guys going on rampages. And like even in this last situation in Nashville, it was a good guy with a gun that stopped a bad person with a gun, right? So if you look at you mentioned it before, look at where crime is rampant. Look at Chicago. Okay? Chicago is the most dangerous city you could even think of, right? Because of the defund the police, because of the folks walking off the job, like you mentioned before, in droves. People are just leaving the job. The mayor, thank God, is leaving. She was just completely ineffective. But the fact that city is so dangerous, and the fact that there's a lot of crime that's, for example, it's black on black crime in that city, which goes unmentioned for some silly reason. I don't understand that. It's, yes, there's a lot of crime that's gender-based or racism-based, but there's also crime within communities.
That's real. There's
goes
black
unmentioned.
on black crime, but
Goes
these
unmentioned,
mass
and
shootings have
but
been.
the numbers. My point are, look at the numbers in Chicago. We're talking thousands per year. Children in McDonald's being shot by their own folks. So in these communities, gang things of that nature, and for some reason that kind of gets swept under the rug. So if we're going to talk about violence and crime, we have to talk about everybody.
It's all of it. It's all
all
of
of it.
But the mass shootings is a serious problem.
The mass
when
shooting-
people are going into schools, shooting up kids, going into churches, shooting up members, going into grocery stores, targeting black people to kill, that is different than, hey, I'm going to shoot my partner.
It's without a doubt.
Yeah.
But mass shootings are indiscriminate to a lot of degrees too. Like the guys that go into movie theaters aren't asking you your pedigree. They're just shooting you. So there are people out there, and that's kind of, it's interesting we're going to talk about this because today is April 4th. My best friend from when I was 3 years old took this day in 2018 to end his life.
Oh, wow.
So
I'm
it
so
was
sorry.
it was a gun. So the bottom line is he was mentally ill and he took his own life. The majority of folks that do these things are not in their right mind.
Yeah.
Okay? The access to guns is supposed to go to law-abiding citizens, right? So the Second Amendment allows for us to protect ourselves, our family, our home. It allows for us to carry a weapon, but it also assumes, we're law-abiding citizens. So as far as instructing people on that, again, backing up on education, understanding that. Now, schools, let's just talk about schools for a second. As a principal, you're going to get tired of this. I harden schools like no other principal. I had this one school up in Madison, Virginia. There was a system I watched during a fire drill. There would be a fire drill, and doors closed throughout the school automatically. So I'm going, why can't I use this for code red situations, right? So I went to my superintendent and said, why can't we use this for a code red situation, a drill? He goes, oh, it can't be done. Yes, it can. If I could think of something technologically, it could be done, right? So I got the right company in, and we put in a single button lockdown system in that school. So the principal, or if I weren't available because of some harm, somebody else could press one button and lock down more than 80% of the school. We don't harden schools to possible threats. We also have gun-free zones that bad people don't listen to.
Stricter laws on getting guns or.
Well, I think we law-abiding people should be allowed to get guns. I do believe in constitutional carry. I think the 25 states that have it are moving up. There's Liberty University allows students to carry. In fact, I think they actually have classes. It's one of the safest, and I don't want to whammy them, but it's one of the safest, if not the safest campus in the country. There's an understanding when people are responsible citizens protecting themselves and their family and whomever else around them, that violence goes down. But we need to address what you and I were chatting about before, the defunding of police, the image of police officers, all of that stuff really brings violence even more to the fore.
I agree.
So
And
it's not okay.
What are your thoughts on the LGBTQ movement in the direction that it's currently going in?
The direction, how would you define the direction it's currently going in?
Well, it's progressing. And speaking from a teacher perspective, principal perspective, and educator, what about the influence, that it has had on children? And what are your thoughts on children being able to change their gender at a young age?
I think that decision shouldn't be made till the child's 18.
Okay.
Whether that sounds ignorant to folks watching this or not, I'm sorry.
I don't think
But
it is.
I believe in parental rights.
Yeah.
I believe in parental information. I believe in transparency. The only trans I think should be used in school is transparency. I believe that we should inform. Now, if there was 100% proof that every single kid that made that decision stayed with that choice, you could argue differently, but it's not the case. 70% want to reverse it. So there are decisions made prior to being an adult that we just don't have the brain development to make. Now, should we shut a kid down? And I've seen it. I've seen children that I taught as second graders and, kind of evince certain things, completely become different as sixth graders.
Yeah, I'm 25. I'm not the same as I was in 24
No,
or
you're not.
23, and I'm not going to be the same at 27. So,
I don't see it going.
Clear.
And as a matter of my faith, I don't understand a lot of things.
Yeah.
God created us all.
Yeah.
We're imperfect, but it's not my. Jesus is Sermon on the Mount.
It is being promoted aggressively on
Too
social,
aggressively.
too aggressively on cartoons, on social media.
Every
on
commercial, every Budweiser. Anybody see that? Budweiser, who they just put on their can. So I don't know the guy's name. Dylan, I think is his name. All these companies are making our choices for us. Disney. It's all. The other day I was watching. I don't even remember the name. These folks, these divas who are reading to kids. Okay, not okay.
Yeah.
It's not okay what we're making kids see and think is okay, and it's not entertainment. Recently in Orange County,
Thank you for saying that. It's not entertainment.
it's not entertainment.
It's
And
not entertainment.
Did you happen to see what I was talking about? A transvestite
I think I've seen clips of
he
it.
straddled a little girl in this event.
No, I
he
did not.
straddled, like, I don't know, the girl looked like she was 11. He straddled her. He was dressed like a woman, but he straddled her. Now, if I straddled you, you're an adult. I'm getting locked up. You straddle a child, cuffs on the floor. Okay? This is not okay. This is not, we don't need the President Biden or somebody else telling us it's okay to have these reading hours wherein transvestites come in and indoctrinate our kids. It's not okay. Now, I'm not doing the soft shoe because I'm running for office. I don't soft shoe anything. I was trying to say, though, I take things from, I watch child development, and kids have a certain fluctuation as they grow up. They experiment with different voices. They experiment with different sides of their personality. And you can't say right away, which some teachers do, oh, so-and-so is so effeminate, blah, blah, blah. He's definitely, whatever it is. Let the kid go forward. Let
Yes.
people achieve what they're doing. Let school be a safe zone. Let home be a safe zone where these kids are kind of finding who they are.
Yes.
And get the pieces of equipment out of their hands, because TikTok and
I was
and
just about to say that.
Snapchat and all that garbage
Yeah.
is just indoctrination
If we
city.
can do-
So I don't sit there, drilling into the kid's head that I'm a straight male who's married and this is.
Right.
We don't talk about that.
Yeah.
We don't say there's no. It doesn't belong in school.
Yeah.
School is supposed to be the classic education of reading, writing, arithmetic, and history, and that's what you should learn. You shouldn't learn about the teacher's proclivities or whatever. Shouldn't be.
Yeah.
The other thing is this whole pronoun thing is just gone overboard.
Yeah.
Not to mention it's really subject-verb disagreement. Drives me crazy. So it drives me crazy. But as far as what kids are being subjected to electronically, I actually have given classes to parents about this because, the incidence of autism has never been higher, right? Okay. But autism has grown. Now, we have a game that I'm sure you're aware of. You ever hear the game of Minecraft?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
You ever play it?
No.
Okay. Minecraft, Roblox, all those games. Minecraft, by design, teaches kids to make their own worlds, right? Design your own world. What do we say about kids who are kind of outside looking in with different special needs and things like that? Or sometimes kids who are in the autism spectrum. Kids often say that kid's in his own world, right? He's kind of distanced himself socially. He's got interfacing issues. Now we have games that teach it. So now you take a kid who is in the autism spectrum, you sit him down with an iPad, and you let him play Minecraft. You ever going to get in that kid's world? The critical piece with kids in the autism spectrum is breaking in. Like when they're little, you have to do this thing called floor time. You're basically getting in their grill, kind of making breakthroughs to barriers that they have. We keep telling kids through games and otherwise, electronics, that socialization is something you don't want to aspire to.
Yeah.
So they
we
don't
throw the iPad at the kid like, oh, we're in the car, so here you go. Here's your iPad.
Here comes the TV screen.
No, right. No need to
Here
talk.
So, what about this one? What about the fact that Johnny's so smart? He can't even talk. Look at what he could do on my phone. Really? That's not smart. I could teach anybody to do that. Probably
Yeah.
my German Shepherd could probably figure it out.
Yes.
Doesn't mean he's a genius.
Yeah.
It means he's getting instant gratification.
Instant gratification.
That's what's wrong. And so that
Instant
carries through to your
gratification.
life. When
Yes.
you need instant gratification,
Yes.
then you start looking for legal drugs and everything else.
That can be a whole topic in itself.
But that's where it goes. But
Yeah.
I'm just saying, electronics, folks, you got to stamp on them. You got to get the kids in the books. Turn the pages.
Well, I have to ask you because
Sure.
you are running as a Republican.
Yes, ma'am.
What are your views on January 6th?
January 6th, the information continues to come out. That's all I'm going to say. I
Okay.
don't think we were given all the information necessary. This media, like them or love them, does not tell the truth any longer. When I was a kid, journalism was real. The first person I actually heard kind of give his opinion was Walter Cronkite, was the first person to say we lost Vietnam. I forgot what year it was like 72 or something. Who are you to declare winner or loser, right? But he said it, and that was like a breach. That was like an unbelievable thing for a journalist to do. So journalism today is restricted. We don't get all the film. We don't get all the feedback. I don't know if you watch Tucker Carlson or not, but a lot of that stuff was presented like that shaman, you know what I'm talking about? The guy who got locked up.
Yes.
He's a mentally ill guy that they portrayed as this evil human being. Then when you watch the actual videos, he's actually being toured around the Capitol by the Capitol Police.
Yeah.
So he's out now. He's out of jail. So we need to really, really work on removing these folks that just want to tell one bent story because it's politically advantageous.
And I can respect that. I
But-
can respect that. Having an education
Sure.
and going through college, I understand the importance of getting every side of the story.
Every
so
side.
I might flip through 3 or 4 or 5 different channels on the news just so that I'm getting the full story.
But listen to the common denominators in their talking points. So that's unfortunate too. But I don't want to step on you, but
No.
my opponent decided to censure one of the sitting senators in Virginia because she went on January 6th, spoke her mind, First Amendment, right, and went home. She didn't take part in any of the other shenanigans. Now, President Trump said, we're going to keep this peaceful. He didn't say go attack the Capitol. People did it.
Yeah.
Now, we can't even concretely say if the people that were wearing Trump hats, etc., were Trump followers. We can't say that. There were some, granted, but we can't say who was in that populace. We can't say that every person was like a card-carrying Trump guy, but he wears the mantle of being blamed for this forever.
Yeah.
Was that a bad decision, possibly, of having a meeting there? Could that have been foreseen? Probably, I think, in being a Monday morning quarterback. But at the time, he was frustrated because we're finding out more about the election as we go forward. So all those things. But as far as locking these people up indefinitely without giving them due process, I don't think that's correct.
Okay.
But were there people there that meant our country ill? And are you supposed to break the windows in the Capitol? And are you supposed to disrespect the people's house? Absolutely not. Would I have ever done that? Absolutely not.
Thank you. Can you leave them with your website where they can donate?
My
and
website
volunteer.
is allersforvasenate.com. Allers is ALLERS for vasenate.com. I'm on social media as well, Twitter, etc. You'll find links to that on our website. And please take a look at me and please evaluate. We have 32 days left till our primary, which we didn't even get into how that was fabricated. But it's a one-day primary, 6 hours. Think about the construct of it and think that I wasn't invited to the table to develop that. Please come on out. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for your time and coming in and just being so open and honest. This was an amazing, I think this was one of my longest interviews
Oh, I don't know how long we've been. I'm sorry.
for the
Thank you.
season, but it was so, I had more questions after and I was like, I just know we have to cut it. But
Okay.
I am so grateful for this opportunity.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, ma'am.
Appreciate
You
it.
rock.